Hi, everybody. I'm Erin, the owner of General Giraffes Newborn Care and Family Services. Thank you for joining us today. Today, we're going to talk with Marisa Fanelli, who is the owner of Healing Points Therapeutics in Sudbury, Massachusetts. She is a acupuncturist. And today, we're going to talk a little bit about how acupuncture can help with conceiving, postpartum, and also on babies. Thank you for joining us, Marisa.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about how you actually got into acupuncture.
Well, I grew up, my mom was sick a lot as I, was growing up, and she had a lot of medical issues that kind of drew me into holistic medicine because so many of her issues were really exacerbated by Western medicine. And seeing her treated as like she had all these different parts, but nobody was seeing the cohesive whole. That was what got me interested in the idea of holistic medicine. I actually was a high school teacher in 2002. And it did not work out for me. So during the end of my high school career, I was like, this is not my path. I ended up sitting in my office one day and saw this ad pop up. They just started a new graduate program in acupuncture in Connecticut, which is where I was teaching. And I just felt really instantly drawn to it. So I decided, you know what, why not? I'll give it a shot. I'm definitely not happy in the career I have right now. And as soon as I sat down in the classroom, I was like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
That's great. That's great. Especially the fact that you're super intuitive too. So I know how that goes when you're supposed to be on your path and when you're not, things just don't go right.
Exactly.
Awesome. So obviously you do a lot of different acupuncture. You do some hypnotherapy too. You want to just tell us a little bit about your practice before we get into, the mamas and the babies?
Sure. So I started my practice 10 years ago in Wayland. I was only doing acupuncture for the first year, and then I realized that hypnotherapy would be an amazing addition to my practice. So I went back to school, got certified in hypnotherapy, started incorporating it into my practice, started to really build kind of a reputation around that. So that went on for a while. And I do acupuncture on its own. I do hypnosis on its own, and I do the combination, which is hypnoacupuncture. And through the years, I've also kind of added other things in. So I host a ton of holistic events. I do a lot of work with all kinds of psychics, mediums, energy healers. I bring them in for I vet everyone. I bring them in for events, and we basically give people a taste of this other sort of side, right? Like I'm very, I'm very in the Western medicine world because I'm an acupuncturist, but I know that there's also so much out there that is outside of this, and there's validity to it, and it can be really beneficial for people. So I'm kind of trying to bring that on a larger scale, like to the community and beyond.
And I'm sure though, up until you decided that you wanted to bring it more on a larger scale, maybe with or without knowing, you were using some of that intuitiveness or that feelings or what have you in your practice with acupuncture and also the hypnotherapy at the same time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's been over the past few years, I've really kind of opened up that intuitive part, and I've always been somebody who had like a sense of things that were going on. Like I've always been open to, hearing that little internal voice and all that, but I never considered myself psychic. And as I started to open up more with the hypnosis in particular, I started to realize like, okay, this intuition stuff, this isn't just, this isn't for other people. Like anybody can really build it. Anybody can take this natural gift that we have and work with it. And, so I use it very often in my business and my hypnosis, even in acupuncture. I often will know, like, that's the point you need. And people are like, how did you know?
I don't know, I was there.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of get that way sometimes with babies as well, the newborns, of being like, I know this is kind of what it is. Don't ask me how I know. I just kind of know. But I have to kind of go about it in a little bit of a different way too, to get people to understand, that. So awesome. So tell us how acupuncture helps to conceive, or helps women to conceive. I know there's a lot of people out there that struggle with fertility and stuff, and they do a lot of the medical route for a long time. And then when that doesn't work, they tend to go to more the holistic or the alternative medicine. And can you just explain a little bit how that works?
Sure. I mean, it works on a number of different levels. I mean, first and foremost, anything that reduces your stress is going to be beneficial for conceiving. Obviously, we all know that.
Yep.
Acupuncture makes a huge difference in getting your periods to a good place. So it regulates periods. Actually, it regulates periods faster than you would believe. It's kind of crazy. People will come in, and I call myself the period fairy. Like, they'll come in and they'll be like, oh my God, I'm so late for my period. Like, and I'll be like, I'll give you your period tomorrow. And I'll needle the points. And the next day they'll email me and be like, oh my God, the period fairy strikes again. I have my period. Acupuncture regulates periods so fast. It regulates the hormones. It really has an effect on just balancing your entire system. So, as you know, when you're trying to conceive, like, all of these little pieces have to be in place. And to be honest with you, I mean, I have gotten so many people pregnant who have not even been trying to get pregnant. And it's because once they start seeing me, they're in a place where their stress is down, their system's regulated, their periods are good. And I tell people sometimes, like, if you don't want to get pregnant, a lot of people will come in and say, well, I'm not trying to get pregnant, but I haven't been careful, and I haven't been careful for 2 years, so it's good. I'm like, oh, you better be careful now.
Yep. Now with acupuncture, it kind of opens the flow, or like the chi, or undoes the blockages, right? So people, like you said, that people come in their periods really late, and you put the needles in or what have you. You've just basically opened them for the, I guess, lack of a better words, like the air to flow, I guess, or the energy. That's probably the better word for it. So that probably say same thing when you are helping people, whether they want to or not, conceive a child, and there is some probably stagnant energy somewhere in that general vicinity, and you open it, and all of a sudden it's like, woo, here we go.
Yeah, I mean, it's, in Chinese, so there's always like a Western and an Eastern sort of explanation for how Chinese medicine works, because in Chinese theory, it's pretty simple. At its core, we have energy that flows through these, rivers in our body, and those rivers can either be deficient, which means there's not enough energy there. They can be excess, which means there's too much, and they can be stuck, which means things aren't moving. And so using the needles, we manipulate the energy and the blood and all that to build it, to move it, or to release it if there's too much in one area. We still are, I mean, the thing with acupuncture is we don't have like this whole field, it's not like there's tons and tons of money like there is behind medical research, right?
Yep.
So we don't have access to as much, we don't, I mean, there are so many studies, but compared to Western medicine, we're just like, we're little. So we are absolutely creating changes in the body's chemistry. We're creating these chemical cascades with the needles, but they're starting to research it more. But in all honesty, like, there's a lot that we just don't know yet. We just know that it works because it says in a book that if you do this, you're going to get pregnant. And when we start treating people and everyone's getting pregnant, we're like, okay, it works.
I had a client tell me that out in California, there's an acupuncturist that actually, when they do IVF, I believe it's a he, will actually perform acupuncture on them while they're doing the transfer of the embryos and stuff, so that to make it stick. And I guess he's really well known out there for that.
Mhm.
So it goes to show you how well it actually works and helps people too. And it's really nice that now you're seeing the medical and the holistic side kind of come together too.
Oh yeah. I think that here too at Boston IVF, I believe they have acupuncturists
Oh, do they?
on staff. Yeah. And they have something called the Paulus protocol, which is basically you do it before and after IVF. You do it you do it before the retrieval. And so it's, yeah, I mean, I think now everyone's really kind of getting to be more open to the idea that this actually has validity. It is upping people's chances significantly of having everything work. So,
which is awesome. I mean, great. However, it helps people, which is phenomenal. So that's talking about conceiving with it. Now, you also work on women who are postpartum. How does that work? I mean, I don't even really know how it works.
So, there's a number of things that we do. First of all, people are completely surprised when I tell them I can stimulate more breast milk to come in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's pretty quick. It's like when people come in and they're really having a hard time and they just don't have enough milk production, acupuncture will stimulate the fluids of the body and open things up, and people will see a significant increase in their breast milk. Again, it also regulates the hormones. So it's great for people that have postpartum depression, anxiety, all of that. In Chinese medicine, there's this theory about yin and yang, and basically yin, it's the fluids of the body, it's the cooling, the calming. So when people lose a lot of blood or, when they go through labor, right, they're losing a lot of fluids.
Yep.
And so we call it yin deficiency, and the yin deficiency can lead to all kinds of symptoms, including a lot of heat symptoms, like a lot of like hot flashes and night sweats and things like that, and lack of breast milk, because that's another fluid. So with the needles, we can stimulate the fluids of the body and get people's yin back into balance so that they eliminate those symptoms and
that's so
bounce back quickly.
So I know so many women who have those hot flashes and sweats and different things too. So when would you recommend they come in? Like when they start feeling those, or beforehand, or like within like the first week, home from delivery, or when do you recommend that?
I mean, ideally, if people can get in as quickly as possible after they've given birth. So typically for me, it's funny because I have people from the beginning all the way to the end. So people will come in, they'll try to get pregnant. I will get them pregnant. Not me, but they'll get pregnant. Then we'll treat for the nausea and the morning sickness. And then usually what I'll suggest is as they're coming to get pregnant, it's everybody typically comes once a week, maybe twice a month, but most it's once a week. Then once they're pregnant and they have morning sickness or any symptoms like that, it's still once a week. And once that fades away, I usually tell them every 2 weeks is good for a while. Usually women will then they'll keep coming back and say, like, I have sciatica pain. Now I'm constipated. Now I have this now. So I'm kind of treating the symptoms as they go through the whole pregnancy. If the baby is breech, we can actually flip the baby with this technique that we have, and it doesn't involve any manual turning or anything like that. We're just using this little herb that we burn on the toe, and it will help the baby to flip. I know it sounds bizarre. It sounds crazy, but it works amazingly well. And I have a lot of doctors that send their patients to me for it. Women, if they're on if they are past due and they're on the verge, there are certain points that you can use to help ripen the cervix and get things moving. The treatments won't work if they're not ready. But I do have people who come because of that, like they want to kind of get things moving. Then afterwards, again, the milk production, sorry, my computer's asking me if I want to X out. The nourishing the fluids of the body, getting women back to their stabilizing their mood, all of that. Usually I tell people and I know it's hard for a lot of women because obviously they've just given birth, but if you can get in as soon as possible after birth, that's going to benefit you all the more.
I'm sure, especially with, well, you probably don't know, you don't have any children, but the first couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, what we call is like the baby blues, where their hormones are literally going up and down like this. Their whole body trying to regulate everything and get back to normal and all that kind of stuff. So, I can completely see why you would say get in as early as possible to be able to help regulate that, along with probably anything else that could come down the road, which might not, because they've seen you as well too.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I have noticed that like the women who have seen me throughout their pregnancy, it could just be coincidence, but they do so well. Like they are usually the women that say like my labor was quick and easy. I bounced back faster than I thought I would. Like I felt good right after and so it's, again, when we're kind of working on keeping the system in balance throughout the whole pregnancy, once it comes, things are in a good place. So you're not kind of taking from an empty well.
Perfect. That sounds great. I had no idea. You could treat for morning sickness and all that other stuff too going on. So, I mean, they can literally see you for an entire like year and a half, starting from trying to conceive, during pregnancy, postpartum, that, and even to the point that like their baby can see you too. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the things or reasons why somebody would bring their baby to see you?
Babies, typically most of what we treat for is simple stuff like constipation, babies who are just like the digestion is off. That's what we see most often. Yep. Asthmatic, stuff like that. That's yep. Definitely something we see. In fact, when I was still in school, I worked at BMC doing, so it's acupuncture, but typically, it's actually acupressure because we don't use needles on newborns, but we would treat babies who were newborns born addicted to substances. Mm-hmm. And it was so incredible because like the babies were all hooked up to machines and they would be screaming and they were so uncomfortable and it was just really heartbreaking.
I'm sure.
And we take these little tools called tations, which are basically just dull metal like sticks. And if you would put the tation on like a lung point and you could look at the lung, the oxygen levels would immediately change like within a second. Wow. And they would have, their hearts would be racing and you'd do a heart point and instantly the heart rate would like smooth right out. Like, and it was literally instantaneous.
Wow.
It was so amazing. I was like, I don't know why people aren't doing studies on this because obviously babies don't have the placebo effect,
Right.
They don't know.
Yeah, I'm surprised that they don't. Not only, you're working on children that were obviously addicted when they were born, but if it works so well on that, why not use it for other things? So many moms, are overwhelmed when their baby is constantly crying or has digestive issues. I can't tell you the amount that I talk to about it as well. Like mm-hmm. I look for a lot of that stuff for how the baby's acting so we can kind of work on that. I would never have thought to bring them for acupuncture for that. I think that's phenomenal because there is technically for colic, there is no medical term for it. Mm-hmm. And if we can, so we kind of go through the book, we go down the list of like what's kind of going on to find the root cause. But sometimes maybe the root cause is that the energy is just not flowing right. There's something just not going. And if we can get them in to help you, it might be a world of a difference.
Yeah. And babies are quick responders because their energy is so, they're untainted, right? They haven't been screwed up like we have. We've gone through our whole life of eating terrible foods and being under stress and doing all these horrible things in our bodies. And babies are just like a ball of like fresh, untouched energy. So you can do so little and affect like such huge changes. You know, I was visiting my sister in Connecticut when her baby was, my niece was born, and she was constipated. She was so uncomfortable, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna stroke a few points on her leg. And as I was doing it, she just like, she instantly settled. She stopped screaming, and then she just went to the bathroom. And my sister was like, how did this happen? I'm like, well, I'm stimulating the points that, you know, get the digestion moving. And it was that quick.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's amazing to just watch too. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So tell me, do you work on men who have fertility issues, for lack of a better word?
I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, my practice is primarily women.
Okay.
I have worked on a few men in the past. And again, it's the same thing. It's regulating the hormones. It's lowering the stress, all of that.
Okay.
But I find that the majority of the time, the people who see me are the wives, like the female, you know. Men aren't as, the few men that I have treated, they were either clients before, so they felt really comfortable with me, and they were like, since you've been successful treating all these things, here's one more. Or they came in because their wife made them. And, you know.
I was thinking that their wife just made them in general, regardless if we talked to you before or not. You know?
I mean, in an ideal world, everybody would go, like every couple who was trying to conceive would both come in, you know?
Yeah.
But again, it's just kind of the nature of, that's in my practice. I have just found that it's definitely, most of the time, it's the female.
Makes sense. Usually they're the ones that want to have the children, and but we also have the mindset too that for years and years they thought it was always the woman that had the infertility. And now, obviously, as we know, it's a lot more men than before. Awesome. Do you have any like advice for women besides just coming and seeing you?
I mean, it's the same advice that they probably hear all the time, but it's so important. It's all about your being able to regulate your nervous system and not be in a constant state of stress and anxiety over getting pregnant. You know, when people stop worrying about getting pregnant, that's when they get pregnant.
Absolutely. I tell people all the time, I'm like, just go get drunk, have a good time, and don't even worry about it. Like,
I mean, that's great advice. It's true. It's like, women get so, and even when they say they're not stressed, I mean, they're in my office and they're like, I'm not stressed, but how long do you think it's going to take for you to get me pregnant? And I'm like, okay, let's just, you know, let's take a breath. Like and I understand it must be, so I don't, you know, obviously I don't have children. So for me, I've never had that like race against the clock because I just never tried to have children. But I understand too, it's really hard because doctors and in medical land, everyone's like, oh God, your eggs are so old. You're 27.
no.
And it's just, it makes me so sick when I have people coming in here who are like 28 years old and they're like, but my doctor told me I have to hurry up because I only have a few good years left. I'm like, oh my God, you're 28 years old, you know? So I think it's not the women's fault. It's not all their fault. It's also society telling them that, you know, hurry up, you have to do this. Like,
well, I mean, after 35, you're considered, you know, a geriatric or something. That might not be the right word, but that's considered really old if you get pregnant after 35. I knew somebody who got pregnant at like 34, and then like 6 months later turns 35, and it was literally like 2 days later they were like, oh, we have to do all this now because you're 35. And she was like, but it's only been 2 days and been 3 weeks since I've seen you last. Like, how much could really change in that amount of time? You know?
I know.
It's interesting how they think that way too. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Marisa, for joining me today and talking about this. Again, Marisa owns Healing Points Therapeutic in Sudbury, Mass. Mm-hmm. You can reach her. You've got some phenomenal Facebook and Instagram. Can you give, you know?
Oh yeah. www.healingpointtherapeutics.com. You can also find me on Facebook at Healing Point Therapeutics. I'm on Instagram. I'm not great at Instagram, but I'm there. You can find me at instagram.com/healingpointtherapeutics. And I have a blog that I have on my website as well. And there's a lot of good info on there as well.
Awesome. And you can also, find her obviously at her website too, but check out some of her other stuff that she has, just to get to know Marisa a little bit more too. Like she was saying at the beginning, she deals with a lot of the mystical part,
the mystical pop-ups. Yeah.
The mystical pop-ups, the mystical side of life and stuff too. Great people. She knows some phenomenal astrologers and some great energy healers. And she has a phenomenal person who sells crystals if people are into those too. But definitely check her out. Check out her website. Check out her Facebook. Also, you can reach her at gentlegiraffes.com. We can give her your information too. Thank you so much for joining us, Marisa.
Thank you. This was fun. Thank you.